American troops landing on Greenland's frozen shores. F-35s screaming overhead. NATO in chaos. This isn't a Cold War nightmare. This is the scenario experts are quietly wargaming right now. Here's what's terrifying. Military analysts estimate that a U.S. operation to seize Greenland would trigger the first armed conflict between NATO allies in history, potentially collapsing the entire Western alliance within 72 hours. And the global consequences? They would reshape world order in ways that make Brexit look like a minor disagreement. Stay with me, because what happens in the first 48 hours will absolutely shock you. Now, you might be wondering, why would America even want Greenland? Let's get real here. Greenland isn't just ice and polar bears, it's a geopolitical goldmine. We're talking about rare earth minerals worth an estimated $1.5 trillion, the shortest missile route between the US and Russia, strategic control over the Arctic shipping lanes that will open as ice melts, the Patuxent Space Base, formerly Thule, America's northernmost early warning system. Did you know that China has been aggressively courting Greenland for mining rights since 2016? Beijing sees what Washington sees. Whoever controls Greenland influences the entire Arctic. But here's the critical part. Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, protected under NATO's Article 5. An attack on Greenland is an attack on Denmark. And that means every NATO member would theoretically be obligated to defend it. So what happens when the world's most powerful military attacks its own ally? Let's explore this right now. Picture this. It's 3 a.m. Greenland time. Without warning, the 101st Airborne Division begins dropping onto Nuuk, Greenland's capital. Simultaneously, the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group surrounds the island, establishing a total blockade. Here's what the Pentagon would need for this operation: approximately 25,000 troops for initial invasion, 150-plus aircraft including fighters, transports, and refueling tankers, 12 to 15 naval vessels to secure maritime approaches, complete cyber blackout of Danish and Greenlandic communications, the Danish military in Greenland, only 12 permanent personnel and about 50 serious dog sled patrol members. They'd be overwhelmed in under 2 hours. But here's where it gets complicated. Greenland's 56,000 citizens aren't just going to accept this. The Inuit population has self-governance and has been moving toward full independence from Denmark. Many Greenlanders would view this as trading one colonial master for another. Expect immediate civilian resistance, even if military resistance is impossible. Now, the real chaos begins in Europe. Within 6 hours of the invasion, NATO Secretary General calls an emergency Article 4 consultation. Denmark immediately invokes Article 5, the collective defense clause that states an attack on one is an attack on all. This is where things get absolutely crazy. Every NATO member must now decide, do we go to war with the United States? Let me break down what each major player would likely do. The United Kingdom, completely torn. The special relationship with America versus NATO obligations. Experts predict the UK would abstain, effectively paralyzing their response. France. President Macron has been pushing for European strategic autonomy for years. France would likely lead the European condemnation and possibly deploy naval assets to the region, but stop short of direct combat. Germany, economic powerhouse but military lightweight, would freeze U.S. assets in German banks, approximately $450 billion, and lead economic sanctions, but avoid military confrontation. Poland and Baltic states. Here's the twist. They'd be terrified. If NATO won't defend Denmark, why would it defend them against Russia? They'd demand action but lack the capability to enforce it. Turkey. Erdogan would play both sides, using the crisis to extract concessions from both America and Europe. The reality is, NATO would likely fracture immediately. Some members supporting the US, others supporting Denmark, most paralyzed by indecision. The 75-year-old alliance would effectively cease to exist within 48 hours. But that's not all. While NATO implodes, watch what happens around the world. Russia's move. Putin isn't stupid. He sees NATO collapse and immediately moves on the Baltics or Ukraine's remaining territory. With America bogged down in Greenland and NATO fractured, who's going to stop him? Military analysts estimate Russia would have a 72 to 96-hour window of opportunity before any coherent Western response could form. China's calculation: Xi Jinping looks at Taiwan and thinks, "Now's my chance." With US forces committed to the Arctic and the Western alliance in chaos, the probability of Chinese action on Taiwan increases by 300%, according to Rand Corporation War Games. The UN Security Council holds an emergency session within 12 hours. Russia and China immediately condemn the US invasion. Oh, the irony. They push for sanctions, asset freezes, and international isolation of America. The US vetoes everything, but the diplomatic damage is catastrophic. Global markets. The Dow Jones drops 4,000 plus points in the first day, the largest single-day point drop in history. European markets crash by 15 to 20%. The dollar weakens by 8 to 12% as countries begin emergency diversification from US currency reserves. Oil prices spike to $180 plus per barrel as uncertainty grips energy markets. We're talking about a potential global recession triggered within 1 week. Now let's talk about Denmark's options, and they're all terrible. Option A, diplomatic capitulation. Denmark could accept the fait accompli, negotiate compensation, and try to maintain some influence over Greenland's future. This would destroy the Danish government. The Prime Minister would be forced to resign within days. Option B, military resistance. Denmark's entire military is about 15,000 active personnel with 50,000 reserves. Against America's 1.3 million active troops and $877 billion military budget, it would be over before it started. But Denmark could activate asymmetric warfare, cyber attacks on US infrastructure, covert support for Greenlandic resistance, economic sabotage. Option C, coalition building. Denmark rallies the EU to impose crushing economic sanctions on America. We're talking freezing $2.3 trillion in US assets held in European banks, banning US companies from European markets, ending intelligence sharing, closing US military bases in Europe. This option is actually the most likely and most damaging. Here's what's really shocking. Even after US military victory, the occupation becomes a nightmare. Greenland's terrain is 80% ice sheet, with scattered settlements along the coast. It's larger than Alaska, with terrain that makes Afghanistan look easy. The Greenlandic resistance would employ guerrilla tactics in extreme Arctic conditions where US forces have minimal experience. International sympathy as an indigenous population fighting colonization. Support from Denmark, EU, and possibly Russia providing weapons and intelligence. Did you know that the US military has almost zero Arctic warfare capability compared to Nordic countries? American troops trained for deserts and jungles would face temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius in winter, 24-hour darkness for months, supply lines stretching thousands of miles, equipment failure rates of 40 to 60% in extreme cold. Experts estimate the occupation would cost $50 to $80 billion annually, making Afghanistan and Iraq look cheap, and it could last decades. But the surprise is, the greatest threat isn't military, it's legal and moral. Here's what nobody's talking about. The United States would become an international pariah overnight. Think about this. America has spent 75 years building a rules-based international order. Democracy, human rights, territorial sovereignty, international law. Every value America claims to represent would be destroyed in one action. The propaganda victory for China and Russia would be unlimited. Every time the US criticizes Russian aggression or Chinese expansion, the response would be, what about Greenland? America's moral authority, gone. Want to know the best part? This would accelerate American decline faster than any military defeat could. Countries would rush to form alliances, excluding the US. The dollar's reserve currency status would face serious challenges for the first time since World War II. China's Belt and Road Initiative would gain dozens of new members overnight. The American-led world order would effectively end, replaced by a multipolar chaos. And here's the truly terrifying calculation. Military experts estimate that the total cost of seizing and holding Greenland would be $150 to $200 billion in immediate military operations, $50 to $80 billion annually for occupation, $3 to $5 trillion in economic damage from sanctions and market disruption, incalculable diplomatic and moral costs, all for an island that's 80% ice. So here's the bottom line. Could the US military seize Greenland, Absolutely. Should they? Absolutely not. The immediate military victory would be the easy part. The decades of insurgency, the collapse of NATO, the fracturing of the Western alliance, the economic catastrophe, the international isolation, that's the real cost. As I've said, in geopolitics, winning the battle often means losing the war. The real question isn't whether America can take Greenland. It's whether America can afford the world that comes after. Remember that. The most powerful military in history is still bound by the same rules that govern all empires. Overreach leads to collapse. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think there's any scenario where this could actually happen? Or is this pure geopolitical fantasy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this scenario made you think differently about Arctic geopolitics, share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really at stake in Greenland. Because seriously speaking, the new Cold War isn't coming. It's already here, and the Arctic is ground zero.